Here's a question that Nick's going to have trouble answering. It's a good question, don't get me wrong, and it's one all of us have in our minds. The question is, what's the most realistic funding we can expect for mapping under the current federal proposed funding? Any suggestions on what we're hoping for?
So I will not deliberately be opaque and brief, which I like to say I'm often opaque and brief, but I think we're on the 19th mile. Just going back with the analogy, we know that we're not there yet. We know there are going to be a lot of discussions. The president proposes and Congress disposes. And so our advice to our team has just been to put one step ahead of the next, keep on running, keep your focus on the finish line, and it would be inappropriate for us to sort of say what the dollar amounts are going to be or where we're going to end up. So it's painful, it's uncomfortable, but eventually if you just keep on running, you'll get to the end of the line.
I should tell you that I think you know that the association's proposal is that we need to fully fund the $400 million authorized for mapping. I should also tell you that as we talk on the Hill, we see a lot of very positive reception for flood map funding. In this climate, however, that doesn't mean it's going to happen, but there is a lot of, I think, inherent support. And one of the things that's made that happen, I think, is the increase in premium rates that drive the importance of determining where you are in terms of the floodplain. So those two things kind of work together. I'm going to take another quick question or two. This is Todd. A question's about a page long, but I'm going to try to boil it down. Okay. Essentially, the big question here was, why does the sea level rise viewer only go to 6 feet of inundation? That's essentially the question.
Well, part of it is, I think, the user's ability to grasp risk, right? And part of it is believability in terms of the human being's ability to process risk information is fragile, right? And I think some of you would appreciate that if you go in with the worst case scenario, it's going to be a really short conversation, right? And so if you go in with a slider bar that allows people to adjust and to adapt and build their own risk tolerance, you're much better positioned to have it used. Now, could we go up to 12 feet? We certainly could, and we perhaps will do that over time. But when we first built the tool a number of years ago, and I asked for a show of hands in 2009 at this conference for how many people in the audience believed in climate change. I don't know if you all remember that. It was in Orlando. And less than half of the audience, less than half of you raised their hands. And so I think the idea here, at least in my perspective, is you start somewhere, right, with concepts, and you get these things ingrained and institutionalized, and then as you begin to have more certainty about risk, you can begin to have those institutional frameworks adjust to that. But we are always leery to go to the extreme case. Now, could we develop it technologically? Sure. We could develop a slider bar that would go up to 50 feet, So we might do that over time, but I think we've been loath to do that, trying to get people on board with the concept of application. So it's a long answer, Larry, but that's
I actually have questions here for all of you, and we aren't going to get to them all. I'm going to ask one more question, Dave Canaan, of you. Yes, I think it's a key one. It says, what are you doing in your county activities that make sure you've got a watershed approach that may go outside your jurisdiction, obviously?
Well, probably the largest effort that we have that, knowledge communication knows no watershed lines or boundaries. So from a watershed approach, we're doing that. I would actually answer the question to say that is probably our weakest point. Because of the way state law is set up in North Carolina, we have to divide up stormwater responsibilities when there's two jurisdictions that work in the same area. So shamefully, I have to say that we don't really do a good job of doing a solid watershed approach like I would like to do someday, but where we can do it like improving pipes in our roads and setting aside the floodplain for floodwaters, we do a pretty decent job.
Great. Now this is for Dave number one. That's obviously Dave Guignet. So, it's a good question. It's why did you decide to keep A zones when you have detailed data in AE zones?
What did I decide to keep?
Yeah, why did you decide to keep A zones when you have detailed data?
Okay, thank you. We actually have both. I mean, we have the models for detailed AE zones, but those models were created in 1984 in the paper world. So they were updated as part of MapMod, and they're digitally available. But the A zones were actually part of our process of creating a model in those A zones. So you have both. It's not one or the other. It's both.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Let's give a round of applause to our panel.